My 15-year-old nephew scoffed, "You're only here because you pay for everything," while flaunting the jacket I bought him. Nobody laughed. I shut down every account. The next morning, they found an envelope on the kitchen counter, and now they all are panicking. I, 42M, never thought 15 years of being the family ATM would end with a teenage punk in a $200 jacket telling me exactly what he thought of me. But here we are. My sister has 3 kids. The oldest just turned 15 and thinks he knows everything. The middle one is 12 and still sweet most days. The youngest is 8 and always asks me to play video games when I visit. Their dad walked out 2 years ago, leaving behind nothing but debt and a mortgage my sister couldn't handle alone. I stepped in because that's what you do for family, right? Started small at first. Helped with grocery bills when money got tight. Covered the electric when it was about to get shut off. Fixed their car when it broke down. Before I knew it, I was paying half their mortgage, all the kids' school expenses, clothes, sports fees, birthday parties, Christmas presents. You name it, I probably paid for it. I didn't mind. Really, I make good money in tech, no kids of my own, and seeing my nephews and niece happy made it worth it. My sister always seemed grateful, always said she'd pay me back someday when things got better. I never expected her to, honestly. But something shifted over the past year. The thank yous became less frequent. The kids started acting like the things I bought them were just expected. My sister began making comments about how I should be doing more, how other uncles take their nieces and nephews on vacations, how I should help with college funds. Last month, I bought the 15-year-old a designer jacket he'd been wanting. $300 for a piece of cloth with a logo, but he'd been getting good grades, and I thought he deserved it. He wore it to school every day, posted pictures on social media, bragged to his friends about his cool uncle. Then came last Saturday. I showed up for dinner like I do most weekends. Walking into their house always felt like coming home. The kids would run up, tell me about their week, show me their latest drawings or test scores. We'd order pizza, watch a movie, play games. Simple stuff, but it mattered to me. This time felt different from the moment I walked in. My sister was on the phone in the kitchen, and I could hear her complaining to someone about her job, her bills, her life. The kids were scattered around the living room, absorbed in their phones and tablets. All devices I'd bought them, naturally. I sat down on the couch next to my oldest nephew. He was wearing the jacket, even though we were inside, and it was probably 80 degrees. I made some comment about how he must really love that thing since he never took it off. That's when he looked up from his phone, rolled his eyes, and said it. The words that changed everything. He told me I was only there because I paid for everything. Said if I stopped giving them money, they probably wouldn't even invite me over anymore. Then he laughed and went back to his phone like he'd just commented on the weather. The room went dead silent. My sister stopped talking on the phone. The middle kid looked up from his tablet with wide eyes. Even the 8-year-old stopped playing his game. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Nobody laughed. I sat there for maybe 10 seconds that felt like 10 minutes. My chest felt tight. My hands started shaking. Not from anger, exactly, but from something else. Hurt. Betrayal. The sudden, crushing realization that maybe this kid was right. I stood up slowly. Asked my sister if that was how she felt too. If that was how they all felt. She stammered something about him being a teenager, about not meaning it, about hormones and attitude problems. But she couldn't look me in the eye when she said it. I told them I needed some air and walked outside. Sat in my car for 20 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. 15 years of being part of this family, and apparently I was just the guy who paid the bills. I drove home that night and couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about every family dinner, every birthday party, every Christmas morning. Had they all been performances? Were the hugs fake? The thank yous? The times they called just to chat? Sunday morning, I made a decision. I logged into my banking app and systematically shut down every recurring payment going to my sister's household. The mortgage assistance, the utility bill autopays, the kids' phone plans, their streaming services, the grocery store gift cards I sent monthly. All of it. Gone. Then I called my credit card companies and removed my sister as an authorized user on the 2 cards I'd given her for emergencies. Those emergencies had become weekly shopping trips and restaurant meals, apparently. I canceled the college savings accounts I'd been funding, closed the investment portfolio I'd started for the kids' future, even canceled the life insurance policy I'd taken out with my sister as the beneficiary. By Sunday afternoon, I'd eliminated every financial connection between us. 15 years of support, erased in a few hours of phone calls and mouse clicks. But I wasn't done. Monday morning, I sat down and wrote a letter. Not an angry rant, not a guilt trip, just the facts. A detailed breakdown of everything I'd paid for over the past 15 years. Every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every school fee, every Christmas and birthday gift. I'd kept good records for tax purposes, so the numbers were all there. The total was staggering. Even I hadn't realized how much it all added up to. Nearly $400,000 over 15 years. More than most people make in a decade, just given away to family who apparently saw me as nothing more than a checkbook. I printed out the letter, put it in an envelope, and drove over to their house early Tuesday morning. Nobody was awake yet. I slipped the envelope under their front door and left. Then I waited. The first call came around noon. My sister, panicked and confused. She'd tried to pay the electric bill online, and the autopay had been declined. She'd called the bank, and they told her the account was closed. She wanted to know what was going on, if there was some kind of mistake. I told her there was no mistake. Explained calmly that her oldest son had made it clear I was only welcome in their lives as a source of income. So I decided to remove that burden from everyone. She started crying, saying he didn't mean it, that he was just a kid, that I couldn't just abandon them like this. But I wasn't abandoning them. I was simply accepting their assessment of our relationship and adjusting accordingly. The calls kept coming throughout the day. My sister, frantic about how she was going to make the mortgage payment. My nephew, suddenly apologetic and claiming he was just joking around. Even my 12-year-old nephew called, confused and scared about what was happening. I felt bad for the younger kids. They hadn't asked for any of this. But I'd learned a hard lesson about enabling behavior and creating unhealthy dependencies. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is stop helping people who don't appreciate it. Update 1. It's been a week since I dropped off the envelope, and things have escalated in ways I didn't expect. The house is apparently in chaos. My sister has been calling me multiple times a day, alternating between angry demands that I restore the payments and tearful pleas about how the family is falling apart. She's had to take on extra shifts at work and find a second job to cover even the basics. The 15-year-old who started this whole mess has had his phone shut off, along with his internet access. No more social media, no more online gaming with friends. He's apparently been grounded indefinitely and has lost most of his privileges. The designer jacket he was so proud of? My sister made him return it to the store for a refund to help pay the electric bill. What surprised me most was the reaction from other family members. Word spread quickly about what happened, and instead of everyone siding with my sister like I expected, the response has been mixed. My parents called me yesterday. I thought they were going to lecture me about family obligations and how I should forgive and forget. Instead, my dad told me he was proud of me for standing up for myself. Said he'd watched me get taken advantage of for years and wondered when I'd finally had enough. My mom was more conflicted but admitted that what my nephew said was unacceptable and that my sister had gotten too comfortable relying on my money. My brother, who lives across the country and barely keeps in touch, actually called to apologize. Turns out my sister had been telling people for years that I was loaded and how lucky she was to have such a generous brother. But apparently she'd also been complaining privately about how I didn't do enough, how I could afford to pay for vacations and cars, but chose to be stingy. The most shocking conversation was with my sister's ex-husband. He reached out through social media, something he'd never done before. He told me that during their marriage, my sister had often talked about me like I was her personal bank account. Said she used to get angry when I'd spend money on myself instead of giving it to them. He tried to tell her it was unhealthy, but she dismissed his concerns. He also revealed something I never knew. During their divorce proceedings, my sister had actually tried to argue that she should get a larger settlement because she had family members who would help support her financially. She'd literally used my generosity as leverage in her divorce, assuming I'd always be there to pick up the slack. That hit me harder than anything else. Not only had I been taken for granted, but my willingness to help had been weaponized in ways I never imagined. Update 2. 2 weeks since the letter, and the real consequences are starting to show. My sister's house went into pre-foreclosure yesterday. She'd been behind on payments even with my help, apparently using the money I gave her for the mortgage on other things and hoping to catch up later. Without my monthly contributions, she couldn't even make the minimum payments. She's been forced to list the house for sale. The realtor told her that even if they get asking price, after paying off the mortgage and fees, there won't be much left. She's looking at apartments now, trying to find something affordable for her and the 3 kids. The middle child, my 12-year-old nephew, has been the hardest part of all this. He called me crying last weekend, saying he didn't understand why I didn't love them anymore. That broke my heart. I explained that I still loved him and his siblings, but that I couldn't keep giving money to people who didn't respect me. He said he respected me and asked if that meant I'd help him with his school trip next month. I told him I couldn't, and the sound of his disappointed silence nearly made me change my mind about everything. But then something interesting happened. My sister's mother-in-law, the kids' grandmother on their father's side, reached out to me. She'd heard about the situation and wanted to understand what really happened. After I explained everything, she was furious. Turns out she'd been giving my sister money too. Not as much as I had been, but significant amounts for someone living on a fixed retirement income. She'd been told that I wasn't helping much anymore and that the kids were suffering because of it. She'd been guilted into covering things she couldn't really afford, while my sister was telling me that everyone else had abandoned them. The grandmother immediately stopped her financial support too. She also called other family members who had been occasionally helping out and told them the truth about the situation. The network of people my sister had been drawing money from was larger than I'd realized, and it was all built on lies and manipulation. My 15-year-old nephew has apparently been asking about getting a job. At his age, options are limited, but he's been looking into yard work and other odd jobs around the neighborhood. My sister is furious about this, saying he should be focused on school, but he told her someone needs to help pay the bills since I'm not doing it anymore. I have mixed feelings about a 15-year-old feeling responsible for his family's financial situation. That's not his burden to carry. But maybe learning the value of money and the consequences of taking people for granted isn't the worst lesson he could learn. Update 3. A month has passed, and the aftermath continues to unfold in unexpected ways. The house sold faster than anyone expected. My sister had to accept an offer below asking price because they needed to close quickly. After paying off the mortgage and various fees, she walked away with about $15,000. Not enough for a down payment on another house, but enough to secure an apartment and get settled somewhere smaller. She found a 2-bedroom place across town. The 3 kids are sharing one room while she takes the other. It's a significant downgrade from the 4-bedroom house they'd been living in, but it's clean and safe and within her budget. The most surprising development came from my oldest nephew, the one who started this whole situation. He wrote me a letter. Not an email or a text message, but an actual handwritten letter that he mailed to my house. In it, he apologized for what he'd said and explained that he'd been angry about a lot of things that had nothing to do with me. His parents' divorce, having to change schools, feeling like he didn't fit in anywhere. He said he'd taken out his frustrations on the one person who had always been kind to him, and he knew that was wrong. But what struck me most was his honesty about the family dynamics. He wrote that he'd grown up hearing his mother complain about money constantly, always talking about what other people had that they didn't. He'd started to see me not as his uncle who cared about him, but as the solution to all their problems. When I was around, his mom was less stressed. When I bought him things, his friends thought he was cool. He admitted that somewhere along the way, he'd stopped thinking of me as family and started thinking of me as a resource. His comment that night wasn't meant to be cruel, he said, but was just him stating what felt like an obvious truth. He hadn't realized how hurtful it would be or how wrong he was about our relationship. The letter was 3 pages long, and by the end, he was asking not for money or for things to go back to the way they were, but for a chance to rebuild our relationship on different terms. He wanted to get to know me as a person, not as a provider. I have to admit, it was the first thing in this whole mess that made me feel hopeful. I decided to respond, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of a letter or a phone call, I showed up at their apartment with a bag of groceries and an offer. I told my sister I wanted to take her oldest son out for dinner, just the 2 of us. She was hesitant, probably hoping this meant I was ready to resume financial support, but I made it clear that wasn't what this was about. My nephew and I went to a casual restaurant, nothing fancy. We talked for 2 hours about everything except money. I learned about his interests, his friends, his concerns about starting high school next year. He asked me about my work, my hobbies, what my life was like outside of family gatherings. It was the first real conversation we'd ever had, and I realized how much I'd missed by always playing the role of the generous uncle who swooped in with gifts and money, but never really connected. At the end of dinner, I made him an offer. Not financial support, but something potentially more valuable. I told him that if he was serious about getting a job, I could help him learn skills that would serve him long-term. Basic computer programming, web design, digital marketing. Things that a smart 15-year-old could do freelance, and that would pay better than yard work. His eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen since he was little. Not because he saw dollar signs, but because someone was offering to invest time and knowledge in him instead of just throwing money at problems. We've started meeting every Saturday morning. I teach him coding basics and help him set up a simple website to advertise his services. He's already landed his first client, helping a neighbor set up social media for her small business. It's not much money, but it's money he earned himself. My sister has stopped calling me daily. I think she's finally accepting that the old arrangement is over permanently. She's been forced to learn budgeting, to prioritize expenses, to live within her means. It's been hard for her, but she's managing. The younger kids have adjusted better than expected. They miss some of their privileges, but they've also become more resourceful and creative. The 12-year-old has started a small business selling friendship bracelets to kids at school. The 8-year-old has learned to entertain himself without constantly needing new toys or games. I still love them all. That was never in question. But I've learned that love doesn't mean enabling destructive patterns or allowing yourself to be taken advantage of. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in dynamics that hurt everyone involved. I may never go back to being the family ATM, but I'm discovering that being an actual uncle, someone who offers guidance and support without being a walking wallet, is much more rewarding. The envelope I left on their kitchen counter that morning contained more than just a financial breakdown. It contained a wake-up call that forced all of us to examine what family really means. And while the transition has been painful, I think we're all better for it. My 15-year-old nephew was right about one thing. I was there because I paid for everything. But now I'm there because I choose to be, and that makes all the difference.